Alright guys, so now we're going to move into the half guard position. If you saw out of our knee on belly sequence, we tended to end up a lot in half guard first before we could find an opportunity to then continue our leg escape and get out. And a leg escape won't necessarily always be the choice on the table to replace guard. Now, there are subsequent things that we can do from the half guard. There's a whole sequence of sweeps. There's a whole guard to be played there. But for the purposes of learning our fundamentals, at first what we're going to concentrate on is the ability to get out of our half guard back to our full guard position, which is going to be our safest route if we're on our back. So for half guard, what you need to understand is that you have equal opportunity. Your opponent has just as much of an opportunity to pass the half guard as you have of doing something successfully out of it. So what we want to do is minimize the amount of time that we are there until we can master some basic principles about sweeping and controlling our partner's limbs from the bottom. Our first escape from half guard is just going to be a simple replacement. We've done it a couple of times, but now I'll throw in a couple more details for you. Okay? So I managed to get to a half guard position. Okay? The basics of a half guard position, as far as my legs go, is I want to have my inside leg, the one in between my partner's legs, draped over his outside leg here, almost curling towards my butt, right? Then I want my outside leg over top, and I can lock like a triangle, right? This is not necessarily something we're going to use much later on, but for the basics of at least being able to maintain the half guard position, this is the standard way that it's done, right? Now, the most crucial thing about being able to replace from the half guard is not whether or not you have an underhook position, okay? I could have an underhook, that would be great. I could have a frame on his neck. I could be in the worst position possible with my arm exposed. What matters the most here is that he not get head control, because his ability to get this arm in play will stop me from shrimping out in any direction, okay? I could have my arm here or here. Let's say I have it in the worst of spots. I can now release my triangled position with my legs, place this foot on the mat, shrimp my butt out into the free space that he can't do anything about, bring my bottom leg in, okay? And now I'll show you a little trick here. Let's say he bunches up on me and it becomes difficult for me to get my leg around and close my guard. All I have to do at this point is get this hip up. So don't think about pulling your leg out. All I'm going to do is scoop my butt out in this direction. And now I should be able to do a small circle with my foot that frees my leg and allows me to close my guard. Our second escape from the half guard is going to feature all the elements from the first movement, right? But now, since I can make a space independent of his head control on me, I am going to split the difference and might as well also put an underhook in place. It's going to have an additional benefit, right? So let's say I'm in the same position here, and I'll start off with my arm in the worst of all places, which is not where I would necessarily want it. I would be happier with my arm underneath or happier with an underhook already, okay? But again, the most important arm for him not to get a control on me in half guard that limits my ability to shrimp is his ability to control my head. So I will block this bicep, unhook my half guard, place my foot on the mat, shrimp my hips out into the empty space that he cannot follow me into, and now I've created a distance between us. Now I could replace my guard, or I can enter this arm, which was in a not so great spot before, and pummel under for a half guard. Now I've given myself some options. I can continue to replace my guard, or I could immediately move into my dogfight position, just like we've done before, where I continue to shrimp out, post my hand, and come up. And now I can deal with the subsequent position that ensues here, whether it be stepping my leg up and attaining guard here, or wrestling into him and pushing him over, or even immediately launching submission attacks from the position. Now, our third option when talking about replacing guard from half guard deals with what happens when I am not in the correct placements with my hands. So for instance, let's say not only is my arm that fishes for my underhook not in a good spot, but I lost head control. And now he has everything he needs to flatten me out and pass this position. So what I need to do is buy myself some time to correct the mistakes I made with my upper body placement. So I'm going to switch from a half guard to a lockdown. A lockdown is exactly what you see now, but reversed. So rather than my inside leg going to the outside and the outside leg over, my outside leg will go over his leg and my inside leg will go over my own. Now, the last thing I want to do is bend my leg and pick up his instep. Okay? Now, I don't want it to look like a perfect triangle. See, right now, I'm in a good triangular shape with my leg, but I don't have much control on Josh's leg. So what I do now, once I've attained this position, is I spread my knees apart and stretch my legs out. Now Josh's leg is trapped. And his leg is trapped in such a way that his hips can't progress up. So the more Josh tries to pass my half guard, the more stuck he becomes. The more he tries to drive his weight forward, the less he's able to pass. That lockdown position will then give me time to do two things. One, I'm going to try to circle in my head control problem. So this hand is going to pummel under the armpit. And all I need to do is get my fingertips in. Okay? Now, I can always squeeze my half guard and extend my half guard. Squeeze my half guard and extend my half guard, which gives me like these small little incremental shrimps. Now, once my fingertips are in, I'm going to bring this hand over and in front of Josh's face and clasp my hands together, creating a frame. Okay? This is a technique called the jaws of life. Now from here, I'm going to frame really hard into Josh's face to get him to distance himself from me. And once I do that, the arm that is currently under his neck will pummel under him, becoming my half guard, and the one I left behind will slide down his bicep to take away his head control. And now I can do either one of the previous two half guard escapes. I disconnect my lockdown, change my leg over, step on the mat, and begin shrimping, replacing my guard or entering the dogfight position.